All right. Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome and welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. So this video is a little different than some of the videos that I've done in the past. I haven't done a whiteboard video in a while, well, blue board. My husband bought me this beautiful board, and I actually had a picture that's been on here for probably 4 months or so, and I just erased it and forgot to remind everybody why I had it up there. Wah, wah. So my intention is to kind of tie together a video that I did a while ago. I'll have to share the link. The video that I did a while ago had these on it, these rings and bubbles. I had written words such as time, bender, and bandits, and I had talked about the ocean. I had talked about quite a few things that now I just erased. So I'll try to tie those two together. I wanted to share a couple of things, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. This is the elephant in the room kind of video, because I don't talk a lot about events that are going on in the outer realms. I try to just channel and talk about being kind to one another, and sometimes I do pull through things that have to do with computers and the earth changes and things like that, and of course what's going on in our bodies. But I try not to hone in too much on politics and religion and all that typical stuff that is a trigger for many. And I feel like it's something that, and I'm not going to hone in on that either in this video. Wah, wah. This is not a light language video either. I'm just going to tie together some of the things that I've written in the past. So about 4 or 5 months ago, I had drawn this picture, and I had been, let's see if I can, I'll remove this. What I had been shown was that we were being squeezed into, and that was one of the words that I wrote was compression. So I had drawn this triangle, and I had written the word compression in the middle, and I had these bubbles on each corner of the triangle. And I'd have these circles up here that look like bubbles or the Olympic rings, right? That all kind of connect together. And that had been time. I had written units of pressure, or PSI, I believe. And I had written a couple of other things. Playa, oh, maybe that was pliable. Playa. And I had drawn a wave, and I had shown a long wave, and I had shown, can you guys see that? I'm gonna fix this at some point so it'll be easier to see. I didn't realize my husband was so sweet. He gets it for me. It looks beautiful. And I'm like, oh, you can't see it as well on the. So we'll fix it eventually. So this is our long wave. And Dan Winter talks a lot about this, the long wave, being able to consistently hold that space, right? And then I drew this below. So I'll kind of explain, and I'll go to that now. There were some other things I wrote as well. So what I was shown in this beautiful artwork, you could take a snapshot if you wanted to and then zoom in on it if you're going to nerd out with me on this. And I was shown that we essentially had a group of individuals. We were coming into this space where we were squeezed into this place through pressure. So we were under pressure. I'd been hearing that song. And we were going through, I had written solar plexus. And these were all words from one of the channel writings that I did. It might have been, well, time bandits or maybe time benders. And I was being shown that we were being under pressure and we were being squeezed into this space. And it was causing this it was causing a lot of pressure, and it was creating this imbalance. And we were in a place where we were finding the ability to reassert our will, right? Our solar plexus. So solar plexus has to do with will, our will to, right? Fill in the blanks. And I'm going to combine that with sovereignty, because when we're sovereign, we are asserting our own individual, unique will from one perspective. And we're able to go with our gut. We're not influenced and pulled into all these different directions because we're centered. And I did a video on that, I think, yesterday. We're centered, and we find that space so that we can assert and ascertain what it is. Our senses are working in unification. And when we draw that into the heart, or the heart down into the solar plexus, we are then able to express our sovereignty. And of course, that's not the only thing that has to do with, but that's one is all from my own perspective. So essentially, I didn't want to erase this picture. I had it up all the way up until yesterday. And then last night, my dear friend and sister Candace sent me a video of Jason Estes. I've mentioned him before. And I watched it and realized a little bit more about what I had been tapping into. So thank you, Jason Estes. And I highly recommend, if you haven't seen his most recent video, he has a different language than what I use. And of course, any teachers that I watch, I glean what resonates with me. So of course, I picked up on the things that I had been getting from my own higher guidance team. So I always say, when we're watching a teacher or listening to a teaching, just go with what feels right for you. It may not be that everything that person has to share is exactly in alignment with what we might know or understand. And that's kind of the point of this, as well as what I'm trying to get to, is the more pliable and elastic we are, the less rigid we are in saying this is wrong and this is right. And I'm not talking about morals and ethics. That's a completely different subject matter, right? I'm talking about, my hair's caught. Obviously, if thou shalt not is probably a good rule to follow fairly rigidly, because you're not here to harm another person. So it's all about do no harm. And what I had been shown was, we were going through this compression, right? And so what was going on, what I was seeing, was we had a long wave, and it was difficult so there were some people up here, and this is not a hierarchy, this is just a space, and there were people that were down here. And I mentioned 3D and 5D, and that's not what this video is going to be about, but I think it's important to touch on that. And there were some people that were holding space, right? And I talked a little bit about this in the roles that we play, and I won't get into that either, but some people were holding coherence, we'll put it that way. And that was keeping them, whether you want to call it in a higher dimension or less density, is fine. But really, they were just holding space in their heart, and they were becoming this bridge, okay? They were just holding, and they were holding compassion, bliss, joy. They may have emotions come up, but they were processing them and integrating them, and it essentially moving on that long wave that Dan Winter talks about, right? That is the heart coherence. Then there was the group, which I'm going to call the chaos group, that was down here. So this is a scrambled line, short wave, short, 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 short. And this is what raises cortisol in the body. This is what creates dis-ease. This is what creates scattered. And I had written scribble in the dark. So it was like they're in the dark, they're scattered, they're not sure what's going on. Maybe they're learning about some things in the truther community, and it's causing them to be like this versus this. So the thing about that is, it was happening consistently. So the key to holding that pattern is being consistent with it. That doesn't mean that you have to be in bliss all of the time. We're human beings. That isn't necessarily where we're at right now. And if you are, congratulations. But if you're in chaos all the time and you're in a short wave and you're raising cortisol and you're doing it every day, it still holds a consistency, right? So you can be consistently long wave and centripetal, or you can be consistently short wave, which is out of coherence. And what happened from what I was seeing is that there were a lot of people down there and they weren't able because they were being so inconsistent. And what causes that? Not doing the work, not meditating, not going outside, not stepping away from electronics, not asking, am I in my heart right now, or am I in my head? Am I in all analytical, logical right now, or is there some creativity flowing? Because that can sometimes be more of a connection to the heart than the logical, analytical can be. Or am I logically analyzing this from a we could say from a more pliable, right? Softer space, or am I being rigid in my thoughts and saying, no, this is wrong and this is right? When I say this is wrong, this is right, I mean science. I mean, and I want to just touch on that briefly because I know I hear a lot of people go, well, it's science. Well, there was Newtonian physics, which is science, and we now know that that is not right. It was right for what we knew at the time. And it isn't true for what we know now. Even Einstein, that's shifting a lot for a lot of people. He knew what he knew, and he was, as Cryon says, you don't know what you don't know. So my point is that, yes, science is right. However, science has also been very rigid in many different ways. And what happened is a lot of people were in their logical brain, science, 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 doctor says this, doctor says that, and they weren't combining the right brain creativity, feeling side of things and intuition. And that's another video in itself, my infinite number of other videos. So having said that, these people that were scrambled down here were really struggling to move up into the higher bandwidths, we could call it. We could call this a bandwidth, and we could call this a bandwidth. And so this is still happening, right? We're seeing it play out at a very massive scale. I'll come back to that. This incoherence causes the gut to not function right because we're in a place of fear. We're not able to I think we're exerting our will from sovereignty, but oftentimes we can be exerting our will based on what we're afraid of. And if we're afraid of things and we're scared and we're in our root, we don't feel like we have stability, we don't feel like we have support, and then we make a decision based on that, thinking we're making a sovereign decision, then we're in that bandwidth. We're not moving up into a higher, more expansive bandwidth. We're staying in a scrambled space. So that was one part of what is happening still. And I had written that there were these rings and that there were time benders and time bandits. And this is everything I share is a play on words. It doesn't necessarily mean it's literal. But in this case, these rings were wormholes, rings of reality, bubbles of reality, mix, mission, mash, all that together. And each of these, we could say maybe were even timelines or periods of time, even though from one perspective, time doesn't exist. In our reality, it does. So there were particular groups of people that I was being shown that were time bandits. They were stealing time. They were literally going in and moving things. You guys ever seen, there was a movie a long time ago where, I don't remember, it had Jennifer Connelly, I think, and was kind of a well done, creepy kind of movie. And she would go to sleep, and during the night, these it was very who's the guy that does Nightmare Before Christmas and Beetlejuice? Anyways, it was kind of that look. It had that theme to it. And they would go in at night. It was kind of like the Matrix. They would move everything around, and you would wake up and your reality was totally different. That's kind of like what I was being shown. And so people would get stuck in these feedback loops. They were loops is what I was, oh, exoskeleton. Okay, so now I'm remembering. So they would get stuck in these loops, and these looping systems, these feedback systems, were feeding back into each other. And you would get from one to another, and then you would get looped back in to the beginning, is what it looked like to me. And so that all held within it units of pressure. It was units of information. It was, and at the time when I did the video, we were under pressure. We were pushing through, saying, no, I need more. I need to expand out of this set of loops that I'm stuck in. There's more, there's got to be more than this. But held within all of this was compression, and that was moving into this. And I had drawn a triangle, and 3 of these units of pressure, or units, were here, here, and here, and they were all now connected in this triad. So I'm gonna jump to and say, I'm so grateful, because in Jason Estes' video, which I just watched last night, again, thank you, Candace. Did I say that already? I don't know. I've done quite a few videos in the last couple of days, so thank you for sending that to me, is that he says, we had, and I really enjoy his teachings because they're just so crisp, but he mentions that in his own way, not with these pictures, but I think he says that there was 9.2 billion years were essentially hijacked, I guess we could call it. He doesn't say that, but I'm using my own words. Hijacked because of time wars, and they were morphed into 8,000 years. So it's like we had all this time, the bandits, which is what I had written, taken away from us. And it was compressed into these units. So, but it still held within it all of that information, right? But we were forced to stay within this constricted space. Now, I think he mentions, though, that now has been, and he mentions these as timelines. So we can picture these and take it into my picture, pardon me, which talks about this and these loops, which I had called bubbles of reality, could also be interchangeable with timelines, right? So they hold information. They represent a certain unit of pressure. Pressure means, I'm not talking about like putting pressure, but we're expanding out. It's a bubble. And he says that those 3 timelines for him are harmony, order, and chaos, which I always thought it was harmony and understanding. So we move from that to this, and this is what he's sharing. And from my perspective, there may be something else. I'm just, for this purpose of the video, I'm tying those 2 together to kind of explain how it looked from my perspective. So now that we have these 3 timelines, he says harmony and order merged into 1. So I don't quite understand what he's saying about it still being 3, because if harmony and order are 1, I would think we're only on 2 timelines. Now, if that is the case, then I would think of what I drew about the long wave and the erratic wave as being 2 timelines. However, that's kind of where I'm going with this. There's this idea that this timeline, it's the long wave, holds with it certain belief structures, and that this inconsistent, incoherent wave holds with it certain belief structures. And what I'm here to share in this particular video is I don't see it that way. And I'll share why in just a moment. I mean, that is true. So yes, it does. But from a broader perspective or a multidimensional perspective, that's not what it's about. So this compression into these two merged according to Jason. And now we have chaos that doesn't want to play with the other team. Surprise, surprise, right? Now, there can be beauty in chaos, hence chaos theory and all of that. And he says order and chaos, or order, harmony, and chaos are now kind of, he says it's not a war duking it out, but they're pushing up against each other. And that's the waves that I had seen. So I'm going to move into what I'm being guided to share from my own perspective. But I was grateful that he talked about that, and it helped me understand what the compression was, because he mentioned it's 9 billion years into 8,000, and I'm not sure if I got the numbers right. That was the compression that I was seeing, and those were the timelines merging. Merge, and I had written converge, bulge, merge, all that. So what's happening now is we still have this going on. So I just said, there's this belief among some that the chaos timeline doesn't hold value. And there's those that are on the order and harmony that don't believe the chaos holds value. And from my perspective, they both hold value. It would be like taking the information that's held within that bubble and not doing anything with it. And that's not how, from what I see, the universe works. All energy is utilized. It doesn't go to waste. So why waste this bubble of reality? We can learn a lot from it, and we can gain a lot of nutrition from it, a lot of compost, right? And to help us then to integrate in a different way, or maybe a little faster, whatever it might be. So what I was wanting to show here was these lines I have right here are waves, and I kept being shown Moses and the Red Sea. And then I had like 3 synchronicities kind of show up in my universe to show me, yes, the parting of the Red Sea, right? And we've got one wall of water, and we've got another wall of water. And essentially what I was shown is that wall of water is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And within this wall of water is information, people, and all of the information and nutrition and whatever we can gain and learn from. And within this wall of water is information. Did I talk about the time bandits and the time benders? I'll come back to that. Because that for me is not as relevant anymore. There was a lot of rules that were bent and a lot of things that happened. Oh, I guess I should talk about that really quick. Apologies. Let me just go back to that briefly. So I had been shown, and apologies if I'm redundant on this, but I've been shown that essentially the time had been stolen, and that's where I got the time bandits. I think I already said this, but either way, that they had taken it and created wormholes and created bubbles of reality, and then the time benders came in to try to bend it back. Not that you can bend time necessarily, but because time is a construct. But having said that, they were essentially trying to fix what had been really messed up. Hence the squeezing and compression into 8,000 from 9.2 billion, or whatever the number was. So there were people within the chaos order and within the order, I believe, that were a part of this. It wasn't just one particular agenda. Everybody was involved. Not everybody, but a lot of beings were involved in this. And that's part of the reason we're doing what we're doing here on Earth now, is to help, clear a lot of the karma and integrate a lot of this energy that essentially would have been stuck or lost from one perspective. So I hope I kind of covered from my perspective what that looked like to me. So now back to the walls of water, the Red Sea, right? We've got, I put order and chaos here because those are two that are kind of fighting against each other. But I would say that people from order are also, or people that think they're in harmony and order, are also, okay, let me go into this. So we also have the bridge holders. So we've got Moses. And there are many of you watching this that are that person, right? That's what your role is. And you're like, look, this side over here and this side over here are, this is water. This holds information. This holds memory. And this is equally valuable as this side of the ocean. They're both part of the ocean. Eventually, when these come together and merge, which we already had this one merge, right? It still is the same ocean. And this is what a lot of people are just not understanding or seeing. They might be feeling it. It's just like something's got to give here, right? And so what are some of the things? Well, on chaos side, I'm not even going to go into that. I'm going to play for a moment here and talk about agendas, because both sides have an agenda. And I see that with love, because we have a tendency to think of agenda as a bad word because of how it's been used. Oh, this person has that agenda and the other person has that agenda. And let's just look this up briefly, because I think it's valuable right now. If I go on here and I say agenda, it says a list of items to be discussed at a formal meeting. An agenda, you might, so I'm going to put agenda. I love, I just saw a dragon on Google. I don't know what that's all about, but super, oh boy, I just went like 5 different places. Word origin. And this is fun to play with. So if we have any fears, or if a word triggers us and we go, oh, that's wrong, you'd be surprised how many times I've looked up words and it's not what I thought it was. Or it can be moved into different words. In the sense, things to be done, to do. So everybody has an agenda. We all have things to be done and to do, if we look at it at that simply. And I could go a little deeper and say that it's matters of practice. Things to be done. It's very logical here. It's saying that it's, yeah. I mean, I don't really need to go too much deeper there. So everybody's got an agenda. Every side, whether it's order or chaos, has an agenda, generally speaking. Although the ones in chaos are obviously a little more unorganized. Or maybe it's vice versa. The ones that have order and harmony maybe don't need to do anything because they're being present, whatever we might say with it. But we've got a lot going on. These walls of water is polarity. And we have people on both sides. This person in the middle, Moses, is the long wave. This is space that they're holding. They are holding this space, and in this is the long wave, and these are scattered energy. But what happens is it's consistent. So the more consistent the scattered energy is, the more of a barrier it produces, and the more cortisol, and the more you get where I'm going with this. The more rigid it becomes, and the more scattered it becomes. And so I know that sounds like an opposing, is that the right word? Point of view. Oh, how can it be stronger if it's scattered? Because it's constant. It's a consistent scattered frequency. So it's almost like it pulls at, it's like if somebody's trying to get over here and they have to go through, like let's say they have to go through this scattered. So it's like going through a debris field, right? You go through this debris field and it's like you have to, where do I go? I don't know. Is it there? Is it there? And all we have to do is take a deep breath and go into the center, become centered, and look at this tidal wave that is building up around us and recognize that this is both ocean. And then we start to embrace, okay, how can we merge this together without it crashing in on each other? And it can start to soften and not be so rigid. Okay, so some of the elephants in the room about this are, and you guys, this is, so for example, what I'm going to talk just briefly about what everybody else is talking about, which is obviously what we recently had with our health scare and condition that people are accepting into their bodies or not accepting into their bodies in relationship to this health scare. And we'll just call, you know, I'm calling it V for vendetta. No, so here it is, the elephant in the room. And this, I could say, is building this even more. And so I'm not here to dictate to anyone what they should or should not do with their bodies. And I'm not here to express what's right or wrong for you. I have my own bubble of reality in which I choose to hold space. And I'm not a parent. So if you have, what we've got is we've got scientists who are saying, this is the facts as to why this is important to take this into your system, into your body, and merge with it. And we have the scientists who have equal amount of education, right? Some of them went to the same school. They have the same degree, that disagree and say how bad it is. In fact, you should run away from it. And that is polar opposites. And you have a few that are kind of in the middle and saying, well, if you have this, we recommend it. And if you don't, we don't, so on and so forth. And what happens is, think of those two things as tidal waves. Now, if you're in fear, anger, frustration, this scrabble about any of that, then that becomes part of the scattered energy. But if we're in a place of heart coherence and we're able to see and ride the wave, or say, look, I'm going to hold this space, I'm going to make my decision. And from my decision that I choose, this doesn't make me wrong or right, and it doesn't make you wrong or right. Because from this scientist perspective, or doctor of science or health, they are 100% right in their bubble of reality. And on this side of the science doctor that says, no, 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 they are 100% right based on the facts that they are providing. And I'm staying neutral for the purpose of this video, just to show what it could look like if we were able to say, isn't that interesting? Okay, now I make my choice, right? But there are people, there are certain mothers and fathers or elderly individuals who have made the choice to do with their body what they're made the choice to do or not do with their body. And they're in their hearts about it. They're calm. They're in a place of coherence. They're not in a place of fear. They're not in a place of anger. And they've chosen, it's not for me. Or they've chosen, you know, I think I'm going to do this because this is what feels right for me. Where does that put them in this example of what's going on with the polarity? Right here. And isn't that crazy? Because some of us, I know I have friends, I have family that are on both sides. One person over here, one person over here. I think we all do. Friends that are over here, friends that are over here. And we're usually somewhere in the middle. Although I know some people watching this are here. And at the same time, some people watching this are here, and they may have chosen this or they may have chosen that, if that makes sense. That can be very frustrating for those of us that feel passionate about the belief and attachments to that belief in which we are choosing to project onto another person's sovereignty. Whew. Now, I say this with love because I'm not a scientist. So I can't tell you, if I were a scientist and I had this factual proof because I had been working in biology and here's the proof, I may not be saying what I'm saying right now. I'm saying it from my perspective. And it's just neutral, right? I'm trying to share many different angles because I like to look at all of the information. I like to look at all the books. I like to look at what is being presented for me before I make any decisions. If I make any decisions, sometimes the decision doesn't need to be made, is another a fact of it. Now, that doesn't mean that if I have, if I'm sharing information that is presenting both sides, or I'm sharing information that isn't fear-based, right? That might be a little different. I might say, look, this is what I'm presenting. This is what I've found. So I don't believe in what you're presenting because that's not what my proof in the science community says. And I would share that, right? From my perspective, although I'm not in their shoes. So just like being, now, this is going on, guys, in all sectors. And it's not just about what we're putting in or not putting in our bodies. It has to do with the color of our skin suit. I always think of Cocoon, right? When they unzip themselves and they're just light underneath. It has to do with the color of our skin suit. There's been a lot of polarity on that. Now, people that are jumping in because they feel passionate, and I honor them. It's beautiful to be in your heart and feel compassionate about something. But are we part of the solution, or are we part of this? That's where many of us are finding ourselves going, wait a minute, is this part of the solution, or is this just kind of making things more chaotic? And there's people that are feeding back into chaos because they're here all the time, which feeds into the chaos more. And this long wave feeds into order and harmony more. Doesn't matter what agenda is in these two piles, because what I was trying to show are these two bodies of information and memory. If that makes sense, because we can have grandma, who is a beautiful teacher and has made a decision, and she's in this beautiful space and she's helping other people. Does that make her wrong? Right? And does it benefit grandma if we're fearful for her, if she's not in a place of fear? And I'm moving into this particular subject because we are powerful beings that have the potential to integrate, if we're staying in this space, anything from one perspective. Is that true in a third density, or I'm sorry, second density, third dimension? Maybe not, but that's not where we are anymore from what I'm seeing. So maybe what would have affected us back in Newtonian physics, did I mention that? We have our Newtonian physics, we have, so Newtonian physics was true, and it was right, and it was correct back when it was true, right, and correct based on the knowledge that we had at that time. Did that mean it was really true? Well, maybe it was for the particular area of space that we existed within. It helped us understand certain things, but was it the full and complete truth? Absolutely not, which is what we're learning, right? So then we move into the Einstein, right? And did he have 100% of the truth? No. But for the time, was it helpful, and did it help us create many different things? Absolutely. But now we're in a different time and place. And so if Newtonian physics wasn't correct, how do we know that what we know now is correct? In 10 years, we'll look back and go, oh, wow. On either end, I don't know. I'm just sharing that as a perspective to put things in perspective for what's going on in the collective. Choice of politics. That's a whole other. So we've got different colors of skin suits choosing different politicians, and they're angry at each other, no matter what color they are, race, right? For their beliefs. There they are, creating a tidal wave. Choice of words, the words that we're using. Well, you can't say that. Well, you said this and it means that. Language is a living light language, and it's all about the intention of the words that we use behind them. The reason the words have been stagnant and rigid is because of the way that we've been taught to use them and the meanings behind them. Once we start to let go and become more fluid and pliable and elastic, this has to do with quantum physics, then all of a sudden the hold, the spell that's been cast on us with the words that we're using doesn't hold power over us anymore. But if we keep feeding back into the loop of, well, you said this, therefore you mean that, when in actuality, the individual may not have meant that at all, and we're projecting that onto them, creating a loop system and creating chaos unknowingly, it's still creating chaos. It's still feeding that particular timeline, even though we think we want peace. Spiritual versus science. Well, I'm a Christian. I'm using Christianity as an example. I was raised Christian, I think. I don't really know. It was kind of a cult. That's what my Christian friends said, at least. Let's say you're raised Catholic. Let's say you're raised Protestant, whatever. It doesn't matter. And you're like, this is how it works. And the scientist is saying, you're nuts. This is a person in this skin suit, and this is a person in this skin suit. This person's using these words, and this person's using these words, not necessarily understanding that they both mean the same thing. But because they don't understand that, this creates this, and it feeds into chaos. And last, but certainly not least, spiritual versus spiritual. Right? I've kind of talked about that in my video this week. We have a whole community that thinks they're here, but they're really feeding this. And a lot of us are starting to realize that and recognize it and go, whoa, wait a minute. What did I just get sucked into? How did I get involved in this argument? How did I get pulled into this conversation? This is like a tornado over here. Kind of looks like it, right? The way that with my beautiful artwork. They're both tornadoes. This one's, I'm not trying to say, by the way, that harmony and order are not good or that chaos is terrible. All I'm saying is if we are working towards harmony and order and balance, then feeding chaos isn't doing that. And fighting it, let me rephrase that. I'm not going to go there, but when I say the word fight, I mean scrambled fear, anger, and hostility versus acceptance, love, understanding, and compromise, and saying, all right, let's talk about this. Being able to look at both sides, being able to say, all right, that's wrong, but still maintaining boundaries, right? By saying, that's not right. Thou shalt not is probably a good rule to follow, right? So obviously, I'm not talking integrity or morality here. This is just the basics about, am I doing things from a heart-centered space? What is it that I'm feeding? What machine, what agenda am I maybe unknowingly or unconsciously feeding? So there is this bubble where it's human fighting human, ultimately, right? And there's a lot of really old paradigms that no longer fit into this new reality. They're over here. They did, and they were beautiful, or they did and they were ugly. They don't need to be brought along with us. It's baggage, right? Sometimes we have to claim our baggage, though, so that we can dispose of it in the proper way. And that's part of what's going on too, from what I'm seeing. So ultimately, all of this, again, I'm not here to dictate what's wrong or right, what religion is right or science is right, or choice that we all have as a human to make in our own sovereignty, right? But when we're doing this and we're telling people that they don't have the choice to be here, we're creating this. Or might even be pulling it from order and harmony into chaos, from what I was shown. What else? Oh, willpower. Did I talk about the solar plexus? I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but a lot going on with the solar plexus. So we have this area of will, and we've got the will of this side and the will of this side exerting pressure on both sides. But essentially what that's doing is it's pushing our will onto that other person, which essentially means you don't have the right to make a choice. Therefore, I'm sovereign and you're not. And what is that? What is that feeding? Right? So there is an element of, and we all came here to play different roles and we have different choices to make. My role, I feel, is here. Does that mean I'm always going to be here? No. Sometimes I get sucked into chaos too, especially when I read some of the disclosures that are coming up. I can be triggered, but not as often as I was. And I'm not afraid to talk about those things. But on the flip side, I certainly don't want to live there, because that isn't the only bubble in all of this. There are other bubbles of reality than just chaos that includes whatever we think it includes. So I wanted to share this because all of these truths that are coming up, the more balanced we are and the more centered we are, the more we become the bridge so that this things don't collapse in on itself. And we want the old to collapse. That's not what I'm saying. But we certainly don't want people to get hurt in the process. Ultimately, it's do no harm. So if we're doing this in order and harmony and we think that we're being angry at this and we're throwing rocks, then is that do no harm? So it's challenging because we've been in this time loop for so long. We've been in this time loop for so long that is ingrained into our cellular memory, our exoskeleton, our bodies, our organs hold memories and patterns of war, of battles. And so this feels like it's this war that we have to create. But really, we can process this and integrate it in such a way that we can remove those that have been creating these time loops and hurting others in such a way that we're not reenacting those patterns and time loops that they created. Because then all we're doing is feeding back into the system they created. So I know it's interesting. It's and then when we make choices about these things from that space of heart-centered awareness and we're not here, the choices are the right choices, whatever those may be moving forward. So in love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I thank you so much for watching this with an open heart and an open mind, because this is just from my perspective and it's what I see in meditation and dream about and write about. And I am moving and growing and understanding just like everybody else. And so this is my expression of that. So in love and light, guys, in love and light of all beings, in all skin suits, of all shapes and sizes, to all of our galactic brothers and sisters, to all, that doesn't mean that I necessarily want to hang out with these guys, right? Or the people that created that. I have to say to them, bye-bye, goodbye, and farewell, because that is what's happening. There are many beautiful star seeds and light workers and humans and teachers and shamans and alchemists and magicians and everybody working together to help create this new reality. And if we can stay here, it'll help create it that much faster. So in love and light, guys, thank you so much. And last but not least, once again, I want to reiterate that doesn't mean that we're always going to be here and we're always going to feel sunshine and rainbows. There are moments where we do have to stand up and say no if we believe truly in something and we know coming from the heart that it's the right thing to do. That's called being a sovereign being. So I really want to reiterate that, because sometimes when I do presentations like this and other people do presentations, they say, well, that means you're siding with this or siding with that. No, I'm just saying that when we're in our heart and we're balanced, the decisions that we make reflect that. And what we thought we might have to go to war for no longer is part of a necessity, because we've outcreated it. So in love and light, namaste.